Are you tired of being picked on by men your own size? With Manco's jarate pills, you can make your own jarate. Jarate causes your enemies to lose the will to live on impact with that first splash of piss. They will think about it at their weddings, the birth of their first child, at the high school reunions, and will generally haunt every waking moment for the rest of their lives. But more on that later. Jarate is neither affiliated with nor a substitute for karate. The Team Fortress 2 documentary video game, supplied by Manco, shows that every half-decent band of mercenaries needs a diverse selection of specialists to get the job done. During the course of the long, drawn-out gravel war, 3 men served in the support role of precision elimination, a job that demanded discipline, accuracy, and bladder control. In this episode, we explore the stories, lore, and purpose of each sniper across the lineage of Team Fortress's marksmen. To learn about the first sniper, we have to go all the way back to the 1800s. This was a period of rapid industrial growth where factories expanded and cities filled with smoke. War became more mechanical, more distant, and more impersonal, creating a need for more specialized roles. It was also in Greene County in Tennessee that Davy Crockett was raised on the frontier. From a young age, hunting and survival were a normal part of his daily life. As he grew older and became a militia leader and later a politician, he leaned on his reputation as a hunter and woodsman. Although percussion ignition had been developed earlier, by the 1820s, percussion caps had become available to civilians, making rifles far more reliable than flinthocks. For Davy and other hunters and frontier fighters, this provided a practical advantage in range, reliability, and follow-up shots. He became most closely associated with a long rifle commonly known as Old Betsy, a weapon that became tied to his reputation as a skilled and reliable marksman. The history books say that Davy Crockett died at the Battle of the Alamo in 1836, but in this story, that is not the case. Instead, in 1850, despite an already busy life, he was offered the opportunity to utilize his rifle skills in an upcoming war. And what was this war? When gravel enthusiast Zephaniah Mann left his 2 dim-witted sons, Redmond and Plutarch, a worthless patch of land in the Badlands and split it evenly between them, a conflict began. Naturally, neither brother wanted to share, so each hired his own team of mercenaries to seize the other's half by force, and thus began the endless gravel war, red versus blue. Recruited by Plutarch, Davy Crockett fought alongside and against Stonewall Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, Sigmund Freud, Fu Manchu, Billy the Kid, Nikolai Tesla, John Henry, and Alfred Nobel. Yet, for all the firepower on both sides, Lincoln's devastating flamethrower, Billy the Kid's lightning-fast scouting, and most importantly, Crockett's distant but accurate headshots, the result was an immediate stalemate. Each side was perfectly matched. As the gravel war dragged on, the world entered the 1900s, a time of rapid change as industry boomed, cities expanded, and new technologies reshaped everyday life. Automobiles replaced horses, telephones offered global communication, motion pictures introduced a new form of mass entertainment, factories hummed with electric power, and most importantly, Franklin D. Roosevelt finished Abraham Lincoln's work, perfecting the modern staircase and ending centuries of leg-shattering rocket-jumping accidents forever. It was also during this time that a young marksman named Virgil sought to find his purpose. Having served time in the military, he discovered 2 things about himself. He was a very good shot with a sniper rifle, and he enjoyed inflicting pain. During these early years, he also became close friends with a local engineer, Fred. Since the start of the Gravel War, 80 years had passed without change, and the mercenaries hired by Plutarch and Redmond Mann had either grown too old or died. To keep the conflict going, they sought out new mercenaries to take their place. The Badlands itself had changed considerably over these years. Many secret bases had been constructed underneath seemingly normal shell companies, but neither Plutarch nor Redmond were closer to the complete ownership of the land they craved. Seeking what they believed to be the best of the best, an advertisement was placed for mercenaries to join Team Fortress. In 1930, Virgil signed on as their sniper, while Fred joined as their engineer. Virgil took naturally to the role of precision elimination. Across the Badlands, from the Battle of Two Fortresses to the fight at Crossover, the massacre at Well, and the assault on Casper, bodies piled up behind the scope of his rifle. But what exactly were the skills and weapons in this man's arsenal? Well, as a sniper, Virgil obviously predominantly operated at a distance, relying on his sniper rifle and automatic rifle from carefully chosen positions to maximize his safety, concealment, and element of surprise. If forced into close combat, he was very handy with the weight of a crowbar and scarily accurate with a nail gun. Both of these weapons suited a man who enjoyed inflicting pain well. Hearing bone crack under the weight of a crowbar or seeing nails embedded in those who dared approach made the risk of close quarters combat worthwhile. Like the rest of the mercenaries, he also carried hand grenades, just in case. Although Virgil selected spaces to take out heavies, demomen, and pyros from a safe distance, he still encountered his own issues with a very specific class. Over history, we have seen natural enemies form: the spider and the fly, Brutus and Caesar, the king of Australia and a hell, and most importantly, a sniper and a spy. Spies are mysterious and secretive by nature, and in this war, had the ability to disguise themselves as anyone they desired. With this dark artistry, they infiltrated enemy bases, got close to a target, and slaughtered them with a swift yet efficient backstab. For a sniper, someone who required concentration and distance from the action, this was a major issue. For a spy, however, a distracted target out of the way was perfect. Tired of the constant attacks from spies, Virgil sought a solution to his problem. Unfortunately for the spies, Virgil was great friends with an engineer. Through a combination of extreme trust and frustration, Fred the engineer plucked out Virgil's eyes and replaced them with specifically designed mechanical ones. These instantly gave the sniper incredible sight with flawless precision and hyper-perception. It also gave him the ability to see through the disguise of a spy. Sure, he could also see through his eyelids when he attempted to sleep, but to see a spy coming was absolutely worth it. While the gravel war continued in the Badlands and the 1930s progressed, the world entered the Great Depression, and high unemployment and economic collapse defined daily life for millions. This decade was also huge for New Zealand. Following a prediction of global catastrophe by scientist and doomsday prepper Bilbel, the High Council constructed a large dome around the country and plunged the nation to the bottom of the ocean to safety. This collective effort used all of their wealth and resources, but what mattered was their survival. In time, they believed the world above to have fallen as they lived on, underwater. Around a decade later, in the 1940s sunken nation of New Zealand, Bilbel and his wife Lana had their first and only child, Mundy. This should have been a great time for them, but Bilbel's research predicted another catastrophe on the way. Just like before, the scientist brought his findings to the High Council. The people of New Zealand absolutely hated living underwater, and after blowing every last resource on sinking the whole country to the ocean floor, they flatly told him that launching the nation into space to escape his latest magma apocalypse was impossible. Disappointed, the scientist returned home to his wife and son. As a man of many predictions, Bilbel had also foreseen that the leaders would reject his request, so he had built a personal rocket with only one seat to launch himself into space to safety. Angered by her husband's thoughtlessness, Lana fought to claim the vessel for herself. In this chaos, as they struggled and forgot about the safety of their son, little Mundy climbed the steps into the rocket and accidentally activated it. Bilbel and Lana had cared only about their own survival. As they watched the rocket launch, it smashed through the dome above New Zealand, and in its place, the ocean began to flow in. The rocket soared out of the ocean and towards the surface, but it did not reach space. Instead, it crashed into Australia and onto a farm. The world above had not fallen or succumbed to the disaster Bilbel had warned of a decade before. The New Zealanders had simply sunk their nation to the bottom of the ocean on the whim of one man. As for little Mundy, the farm his rocket crashed onto was owned by a couple, Jonathan and his wife. This is clearly a Superman reference, so although the wife is unnamed, I'll assume she is called Martha. Mr. and Mrs. Mundy had always wanted a child, and one had crash landed by chance on their farm, a blessing they took in and raised as their own. Unaware of where the child had come from or what his name was, the Mundys called him Mick. Had they known his birth name, he would have been called Mundy Mundy. Meanwhile, the hole in the dome of New Zealand slowly flooded the country and wiped out the entire population, except for two people, Bilbel and Lana, who sealed themselves inside a lab. Over the decades, Mick Mundy was raised by two loving parents who never told him he was adopted. Though he grew up a proud Australian, he always felt like an outsider. Where most Australian men grow a mustache or Australian-shaped chest hair, he could not, and while other children settled arguments with their fists, he found it more natural to hide in a tree and throw stones at them instead. Despite this feeling of difference, Mick found his calling in life. He was a natural tracker of dangerous game in the unforgiving Australian outback and was happy to spend months at a time alone, honing his craft with a sniper rifle. It only made sense that he fell into the business of assassination under the name Mr. Mundy. His parents, particularly his father, did not understand it but trusted their son's judgment. On occasion, however, Mick had to explain that he was not a crazed gunman. He was a hired professional. One was a mental sickness, the other was a job, a very lucrative one at that. Mick had found the perfect job, one that paid him to do something that felt natural and one that would never dry up. He believed that as long as there were two people on the planet, someone would always want someone else dead. The late 1960s were defined by protest, rapid technological change, and the first human steps on the moon. It was also another important moment in the Gravel War. In the summer of 1968, the Mann brothers accepted that they would need to hire yet another batch of mercenaries to get the job done. Virgil and the rest of Team Fortress, like those before them, had grown older and failed to break the stalemate. As a result, Team Fortress was reclassified as Team Fortress Classic. For the new Team Fortress, Mr. Mundy was hired as their sniper for a considerable amount of money. It was the perfect opportunity for a man with mixed talents, and one of the most significant choices he would ever make. As the new wave of the Gravel War began, Mundy explored the Badlands, from Two Fort to Dust Bowl, Gorge and countless others. This professional assassin did what the sniper before him had always done: precision elimination. He provided support to Jeremy the Scout, Jane the Soldier, and the ever-mysterious Pyro as they advanced the battleground. In turn, he was protected on occasion by Tavish the Demoman's sticky bombs, Misha the Heavy's minigun, Del the Engineer's sentry turrets, and sustained by Mr. Ludwig's healing gun. Under Miss Pauling's oversight, every person on this team pulled their weight, and they all complemented each other well. So what did Mundy contribute, and how did he work? Well, when Mick Mundy met someone for the first time, he was polite and thought about how he could kill them. You know, just in case he needed to. I guess like everyone does. Normal. Supplied with a standard sniper rifle by Manco, Mundy ensured he found a high location, safely removed from the action to take out his targets from afar. In close quarters, Manco had also kindly supplied a submachine gun, and for the brave few who got a little too close, he was lethal with a large kukri blade. Intended for cutting wood, the weapon provided equally effective against human foes. The Huntsman bow proved deadly, and the fortified compound bow marked a critical improvement in his archery. In closer combat, the frying pan and machete were just as effective. Mr. Mundy was very good at his job, but like the rest of the sniper lineage, he developed a natural feud with spies. Snipers had improved over this time, but so had the spies. Not only had they mastered camouflage, but they had also incorporated technology to render themselves completely invisible, allowing them to backstab unwary snipers. While his predecessor Virgil had opted to upgrade his vision, Mick instead discovered a different way to deter spies after seeing an advert by Manco. Mick Mundy was tired of getting picked on by men his own size, but Manco's jarate pills offered him a better future. These little pills promised his kidneys to triple in size, and with it, the ability to produce urine in larger volumes in a more concentrated output with a unique potency. As a sniper, Mick had a lot of time alone, watching and waiting. Time to drink coffee and drop this substance into jars. So how did this deter spies? Well, simply put, Mundy always made sure to have a jar of his jarate on hand whenever he detected the presence of a spy. When smashed onto a foe, the sniper's special juice was claimed by Manco to short out cloaking devices and make anyone caught in the splash vulnerable to 35% more damage. Sure, washing the substance off removed this effect, but it did not remove the shame. Being smeared in sniper juice came with the side effect of losing the will to live. Those first damp moments would stretch into months, years of long regret-filled decades. With a lot of time on his hands, Mick made and used a lot of this stuff. While the side effects were pretty severe, the substance also had the ability to put out fires. If an ally was set ablaze by a pyro, it was up to Mick to decide how generous he felt. Use his jarate to stop the flames, or let them keep their dignity and burn alive. From 1968 to 1971, Mr. Mundy fought in the Gravel War and formed a small family outside of it with his fellow mercenaries. He spent holidays with them, followed orders because he was paid to do so, and kept his parents updated about his life. Then the war came to a sudden end. The deaths of the Mann brothers finally broke the 120-year stalemate. In a briefing delivered by Miss Pauling, the mercenaries were informed that their jobs had died along with them. There was, however, another job on offer. Redmond and Blutarch Mann had been murdered by their brother, Gray, someone they never knew existed. Gray did not care who occupied the Badlands. He wanted control of Manco instead. To achieve this, he designed and constructed robotic versions of the 9 mercenaries and ordered them to seize Manco facilities by force. To stop them, Team Fortress was rehired by Manco to defend its assets. This was an unpaid contract, but when Mick learned that the robots dropped money when destroyed, he was more than happy to help. This conflict did not last long. By March of 1972, Gray recognized the same stalemate emerging between the mercenaries and his robots, and instead used his brain to claim the title of CEO of Manco from Saxton Hale. This brought the war to a close, he fired the mercenaries, and once again, Mundy was left without a job. The end of the Gravel War and Man vs. Machine led to the disbandment of Team Fortress, while Misha the Heavy returned home to the Zhejiang Mountains and his family, and Del the Engineer disappeared completely. Mick travelled back home to his parents' farm. It was only upon his arrival that he discovered both his parents had passed away. While reading this, I suspected TF Industries or the administrator had something to do with their deaths, but nothing has ever been confirmed. Mr. Mundy had lost everything within such a short space of time, and as he sorted through the family farm, he was hit with something else. He discovered documentation that showed he was adopted. The parents he had known were not his birth parents. Over the next 6 months, Mick went off-grid and attempted to find out who he was and where he had come from. Although a natural tracker, every trail he followed came to nothing. Then he thought about Team Fortress. The administrator knew everything, and he believed that if he could interact with her or Miss Pauling, he could get his answers. So, he waited. In September of 1972, Miss Pauling and the Demoman arrived at the Mundy farm in an attempt to secure the sniper's help. Given the opportunity, Mick stalked his prey, knocked them out, restrained them, and even dug 2 graves just in case before attempting to interrogate Pauling. The assistant, however, was more than willing to provide the information he needed, and instead offered to take him in person to where he had come from. Their arrival in the sunken country of New Zealand explained everything. Why he had felt like an outsider his whole life, and why, despite being raised Australian, he was not. He was a New Zealander. His parents, Bilbel and Lana, the last surviving people of the nation, were also not what he expected. They were bitter, selfish, and explained how he had left them. They were also under the belief that the world above had fallen. When Mick explained that the world above was fine, Lana snapped. Enraged that her husband had ruined her life for nothing, she stole his final rocket and launched herself into space. In seconds, the hole it left began to fill the lab with water. In this chaos, Mundy looked around for his father, but he could not find him. Bilbel, just like Lana, had sought his own survival. Despite being reunited with his son, he stole the submarine the mercenaries had used to travel there, stranding them and leaving them to their deaths. Within minutes, both of Mick's birth parents had abandoned him for their own selfish needs. As he attempted to digest this, he looked up, saw another team of mercenaries, and felt a sharp pain in his chest. Then everything went black. When Mick Mundy opened his eyes, he found himself in God's secret heaven base, and before him stood his real parents, the people who had raised him. For hours, he spent time with them in peace, but eventually, they told him he needed to return to the mortal world, that he had left a lot of rotten fucks down there that needed killing. He was a professional killer, and a professional wouldn't quit when there was still work to be done. And then he woke up. Was this moment real? Well, during Mr. Ludwig's attempts to bring the sniper back to life over the course of 12 hours, he had injected a blue whale's pineal gland directly into Mick's brainstem that the medic believed had induced a vivid hallucination. So it's up to your own opinion, I guess. Mr. Mundy had been assassinated by another sniper. Not just any sniper, but Virgil himself. Due to Grey Man's actions, a new war had erupted between Team Fortress and Team Fortress Classic. Mick was normally motivated by money, but this made it personal. He believed his parents were waiting for him in heaven when he eventually died, and that belief stripped away his fear of death. This made him the most dangerous person on the island. In a rare moment of cooperation, Mick and the spy worked together to eliminate a shared threat. Virgil had established himself in a sniper nest, positioned just out of reach. The spy attempted to draw him out using a disguise, but Virgil's eyes caught the trick instantly. What even Virgil's eyes failed to catch was Mundy entering through the window. Virgil was a sadist, and his need to torment his victims had left him vulnerable to the threat behind him. When he realized Mundy was not only holding his sniper rifle but aiming it directly at him, he asked his replacement to think about what he was doing. Mick simply fired. He was a sniper and this was his target. Only a sadist toyed with their victims and delivered long monologues. The death of Virgil the Sniper was one of many major events that happened that day. Team Fortress Classic soon fell, another war came to an end, and so too did the mysterious administrator. There were no more wars to fight. Team Fortress once again disbanded, and Mick returned to his regular line of work: paid assassinations. Davy Crockett, Virgil, and Mr. Mundy were not the only snipers ever employed by the administrator's secret organization. They were simply the snipers assigned to Team Fortress. Before them came Team Ajax, Team Citadel, and Team Echelon. Fortress was just one of many teams operating under the same umbrella, though it was widely considered the worst of them. The snipers of Team Fortress did not need to understand the war they were fighting. They did not concern themselves with land disputes, corporate vendettas, or century-long grudges. Each fought for his own reasons. Davy Crockett was drawn in by duty and the opportunity to prove his skill as a frontierman marksman. Virgil fought because he enjoyed inflicting pain and had finally found a profession that rewarded it. Mundy fought because he was paid to do something he was exceptionally good at and because the job suited his nature perfectly. Although the mercenaries Mundy fought alongside were, at first, simply co-workers sharing the same battlefield, over time they became something more. Through years of combat, loss, and uneasy camaraderie, they became his family. 7 years after the wars finally came to an end, Mundy took time away from his work and reunited with them for Smithmas. For a man who believed that as long as two people existed, someone would always want someone else dead, it was a rare pause. Not because the work had stopped, but because for once, he chose to remember the people who had survived it with him. I waited a while to cover the sniper class because I wanted to find the time to explore each one properly. Davy was a great choice for the first sniper, but where Valve shone were with Virgil and Mick. These men are the complete opposite of each other, despite their similar line of work, and I like that it was Mick who took his predecessor out. The balance of silly and genuine sadness in the writing of Mr. Mundy's character is actual perfection. We have silly things like jarate, a silly piss joke that is a huge part of his character, that makes sense in universe, mixed with a sense of longing and feeling out of place and never understanding why. I did my best with this video to deep dive into the lore as much as possible, while avoiding retelling the entire story of the Gravel War again. For my regular viewers, you may have also noticed a bit of a style change too with the inclusion of in-game audio. I'm aiming for even more of a documentary style focus going forward. It was something I tried last week for a video that explored Nova Prospekt, and it seems to have been well liked there. I thought I would give it a go with a deep dive lore video. Let me know what you think of this change. I would also like to shout out my thumbnail artist, Chick. I am in love with this. I have a Half-Life video planned for next week, something I've always wanted to explore for a while, so stay tuned for that. I think that was everything I wanted to say. As always, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if not, and let me know what you thought in the comments below. Subscribe if you're not already. At last, a huge thank you to those who help support on channel members and Patreon. Queen Arby, Lewis, Oren X, Drakey Phoenix, Daniel Car Drawings, 501st Clone Boy, Ruben Mendoza, Imperial Embers, Canifex, Jimsy, Average Soul, Azu, Jonas, Yellow Rodriguez, Detroit, Motzi, Brina Lee, Jacqueline Lavelle, King Jack, Lifeblood, Reaper Gaming, Mamet, Kaidazin, Zuni115, Full Classic Source, Pooncake, Pointless Man 47, Super Rifle, Frankie, and Tiki. What did you think of this style? Who was your favourite sniper? And what would you like me to cover next? This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.